We got green beans and garden sweet peas, thyme, some coriander, basil. This is garlic. That might come out well. Of course, the almighty parsley. My secret is we can't grow anything up here because my cats always ruin it. So I'm actually gonna I'm gonna plant it all and I'm gonna bring it downstairs. And fun fact, my brother and I live in the same apartment building. I'm gonna bring it downstairs to his balcony and that's where I'm gonna let it grow. So I got two things of soil. You saw the seeds. I've got this nice sort of gardening soil. It's gonna be wet and gross. And I've got down here like generic lawn soil. Seeds? No, they don't go bad. If you keep them dry, they don't go bad. Now we got these seeds here. We got herbs, we got radishes and beans. But we'll start with the grass. So I'll show you how I plant grass for my cats. I do it for two reasons. One, so that they have some grass to chew on. Cat grass is probably the best choice. Like legitimate cat grass. We have tried that before, but it's so delicious, they eat it so fast. And it comes in a small container, so you can't really grow that in heaps. That's like a treat. So what I've been doing is in the spring and summer, past couple years, I went and I got a couple dollar store tubs, just like that. And I drilled a hole in one, and I do this, and that's so the water can drain through. And then I went and bought like this $12 jug. This is the same jug of grass seeds that I've had for 5 years, and seeds don't really go bad as far as I know.
Wait, what?
That was an accident.
You made a mess.
That was an accident. I made a huge mess. Yeah, don't do anything crazy, boy. Alright, Louie.
We need to dump them.
Yeah, we'll just bring the buckets down and dump them in the dumpster.
We tried. Yeah. I've seen lots of cats though. Oh yeah. Yeah.
As you can see, clumps like this, big clump like that, you gotta break it up. So you get a little poker like this, or a little rake of some sort. Just break it all up. You want the soil to be loose and loamy. You want it to, when you pick it up, it sifts through, kind of falls through your hands. You know, you're not gonna get every clump out unless you sit here and do it for a really long time, but generally if you're gardening and not just growing grass like I'm doing today, then you'll want to make sure it's very, 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 very soft. As loose and soft as possible. And that just helps the roots of plants grow more easily and much healthier. So we're gonna just play with the dirt for a little while till it's loosened up. And then the next step is seeds. I'm just using regular like lawn seeds, just grass. Like I said, cat grass is kind of like it's a mixture of, I don't know if you Google it, it's like a mixture of barley, wheat, like long grass sort of plants. But I'm just using lawn grass, like for patching your lawn, front yard, backyard, side yard. Seeds, you can see the green, that's the grass seed. I think this gray stuff is just a little bit of fertilizer plus a little bit of water retention. So what I do is I mix it a little bit, that way you get some, you know, deeper down. And then I also top it with another layer, just a fine layer on top. You have to think about how each pellet is the potential for a single blade of grass, and that's why when you're doing grass like this, you want to make sure that you have good coverage. I'll post some pictures to show you what it looks like when it's actually done, because I've done it in previous seasons and it worked out quite well. And of course, the most important part, you want to water it, but you don't want to soak it. Okay, so I don't have a watering can, so I'm using a pot. This is about just under a liter of water.
Oops.
You don't want to kill
Your watering can's right here.
or erode when they're growing, like when they've grown, but once they're seeds, it's okay to just kind of splash them around here. You don't want to soak it. You don't want to overwater. It's very important not to at the beginning stages of their lives. Later down the road, when they start to sprout, you can do this with your hand.
I think this is her can.
And that helps the water not, you know, dig holes in the soil. That's it. That's how you grow grass. You ever thought you'd watch a video about how to grow grass? I risk it. I'm gonna grow beans up here because they're in a taller flower pot. I think that should be okay. When you're growing things like beans, you want to make sure that you've got something for them to grow and vine around. Beans, tomatoes, peas, etc. So those are all plants that need something to grow around for support. So this is actually a tomato vine one, but it'll do just fine for our purposes. And I think this might help to deter the cats as well. Sweet peas and garden beans, they both vine. So I'll show you. We're gonna put a couple in each corner. We grew them last year and they stick pretty close together. So you don't want seeds to go any deeper than just a few centimeters really. Because you have to think about the deeper it goes, the more work it has to make to come to the surface. Now that's very much dependent on the type of seed you're growing. But I know for beans like this, just about a centimeter or two is enough. I'm gonna grow 6. You can see I'm gonna put my finger in, boop, drop the seed in there, and bury it. Put my finger in, boop, and bury it. Put one in the middle. Just like that. So really, no more than just a few centimeters. Then we're gonna water it with our pot. So same rule of thumb. We'll do it like this. We'll run a little trough, just 1 finger's worth, like so. Just sprinkle the seeds as you go. Then you just cover it all back up. Same thing, just sprinkle it across. And we very gently cover them, just with a wee bit of soil. Just a little. I've got this watering mechanism. Just lets me sprinkle. This is kind of a cheat. This is actually a mechanics tool. It's for spraying brake cleaner. It's a pressurized watering can. Perfect. Let's move on to the herbs. Let's see, we've got 4 kinds: parsley, thyme, coriander, and basil. So basil is my favorite of the bunch. We'll start with parsley in this corner. Basil, coriander, whatever the last thing is. You'll find herbs and very leafy things. It's only going to request like 0.6 centimeters, so that's only 60 millimeters of coverage, which is, if you think about it, a very small amount. So we'll make a U situation here. So this kind of grows kind of bush-like. Put a good handful there. And we just brush it back over. Okay, that's our parsley. No, let's pre-dig all of it here. That. Oh, missed a clump. Missed a clump. Make sure it clumps out. Herb seeds, you can barely see them. So you gotta be kind of careful with it. Okay, we're done with the gardening. So we grew some herbs, thyme, coriander, basil, and then we grew radishes and garlic, and then I'm growing beans and peas. So that's what we're, and grass, of course. We're growing the grass for the cats. So we'll see how it turns out. It'll be a few days before we see anything happen. So we'll check back in a couple days to see if the crops, the plants sprout. We'll see you then. These are radishes. This is coriander, I think. Just a little baby bit there. And then we got some sprouts here. Hey, it's me, Farmer Kenneth. So it's been a couple weeks since we planted everything. You can see there's some greenery happening here, and it's great. After I'm done watering, we're gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna give you a couple tips. Just some pointers that I learned the hard way to help your garden be kind of more successful than my old ones have been. Now we water. Okay, I'm back. Okay, hey, it's me, at-home gardener Kenneth. Now that we're inside, where it's not incredibly hot and sunny, I'm gonna give you my 5 tips for making your garden a little bit more viable, your little at-home garden. First tip is, make sure you check it every day. You don't necessarily have to water it every single day, but you should always check the garden. Make sure there's nothing weird going on in there, especially when you start to see something sprouting. Like we've seen here, we see tiny little sprouties coming out in our herb section. You wanna make sure that nothing's eating that, right? No bugs, no nothing like that. If you see some bugs, you wanna deal with it right away. Like little flies, you'll get lots of those. Or beetles, things like that. Obviously, if you're using like a planter, you'll less likely have that problem because just because that they're in its own isolated plot of soil, but you never know. So make sure you check your garden regularly. 2, if you're in the middle of the summer or you're having a hot spell in your home area, it's tougher to overwater, but it's still possible. So make sure when you go down there, you want to touch the soil. If it's dry on top, add a layer of water on top. Water the top until it's all dark and it's showing you that the soil is moist. In my experience, I've noticed that although the top layer may be incredibly dry, your plants actually, the soil around the plant is actually retaining a lot of the water. I found this out because last year we hadn't visited our garden for quite a few days because work was just too busy and we weren't able to drive all the way out there. And when we finally went and looked, I was thinking, oh man, the soil's all cracked, it's all dry on top, but the plants looked green and happy. So I actually dug out about 5 inches of soil and there it is. Underneath, I mean, that's just the nature of how like earth works, but it was still wet beneath. So we had not had any rain or anything like that. And the last time I had water was approximately 4 or 5 days previously. And we found that in fact, the soil was still moist enough to keep the plant okay and healthy. Number 3, was number 2 even a tip? The tip is touch the soil. Touch the soil and make sure it needs water. Number 3, if you have cats and you're trying to do my grow it yourself green bucket of grass, you saw there's a couple sprouts now. It's only been about 2 weeks. And we've got a couple beautiful little hairs of grass sticking up now. So the main tip is keep that away from your cats. We have learned the hard way in the past that they realized that that was going to become grass for them. So they started scratching at it and then they started, you know, doing pee pee poo poo in it. So now we have to grow our grass either outside, off our balcony, or, you know, like we're in an apartment building. When we were living in our basement suite, we could just put it outside the door and the cats couldn't access it. But now that we're in an apartment with a balcony, we can't grow it on our balcony anymore. We have to bring it downstairs. I'm lucky enough to put it, you know, by my brother's apartment, so that's pretty fortunate. There's space down there, and it still gets plenty of sun, and it's just downstairs for me. But I cannot bring that soil up here for the cats until it's fully grass, because without doubt they're gonna scratch it, they're gonna pee pee poo poo on it. It's gonna be nasty, nasty. So that's the main thing. If you got a cat that you're trying to make a grass patch for, keep that dirt part and seeds part away from them until you've got a nice grassy hair that you can bring up for the cats to roll around and munch on. Tip number 4 is pick your weeds. Now, you may not think that you can get weeds sprouting in your own little planters, but it's possible for a couple of reasons that I've discovered in my own experience. And one, this is regarding the herbs and, you know, like the beans that we're growing and things like the radishes that we're growing. I have to check for weeds because, one, not all soil is going to come perfectly just soil. That's what I've experienced. I know they don't advertise that in any way, but I have experienced just having soil, and I had the soil sitting there, hadn't sown any seeds yet, and suddenly green stuff's growing out. And that's because little, like, weed seeds, or like crabgrass, or whatever kind of seeds, whatever kind of weeds that you experience on the regular, that stuff can end up in your soil without you intending for it to. There's a couple reasons that I believe it happens. One, the soil you purchased already had some seeds in it, and it needed the perfect opportunity to be, you know, poured out onto a planter, experience sun and water, and then the weeds can flourish. Second reason is, I think bugs and birds that come and land on your balcony, land on your porch, and come and sniff around and peck around at your garden, they're dropping seeds from somewhere else. So I have had experiences where, you know, my own little planter with a tomato plant in it, just a tomato plant, suddenly there's weeds hanging out at the bottom. Now, that planter is small enough that it cannot sustain, you know, whatever it is, depending on what you're growing, it probably can't sustain the main plant you're growing, plus a bunch of little weeds sucking up the life that you're trying to provide. So make sure you go, you check it, Google what weeds look like, Google what, you know, crabgrass, dandelions, whatever it is, Google what that looks like, and just yank those suckers out of there. Pull them deep down, pull them by the soil so you can pull them up by the root fully, and then they're gone forever. Burn them, eat them, do whatever you want, but don't let them stay in your planter. Not good for your plants. My 5th and final tip, also, by the way, I don't know how this freaking 2-week-long process of making this video turned into a tips video. I was watering and I was thinking maybe I should probably say something useful for the people on this video. My last tip is regarding watering. It may not always work perfectly, but if you've just sown the soil and you're pouring water, you don't have a watering can, you don't have a sprinkling situation, I would take a strainer, or I would just use my hand and I would have a glass of water. I know there are apartment dwellers out there trying to garden at home, and if you pour water directly on and you're not gentle enough, you could, you know, disturb the soil, and then the seeds kind of get pushed around, and then suddenly they're not where you wanted them to be initially. So what I would do is I would get a strainer, pour the water through the strainer, like a colander, not a strainer, sorry, so that you've got multiple little raining situations spouting out, or I would put my hand underneath and pour a glass of water over my hand, and then it just kind of spreads out the water, so it's not like a friggin' waterfall blasting into one spot and just killing that spot, right? It's not the end of the world if you do end up doing that. The alternative is you take the glass and you water the edges of the planter so that you're not hitting where the seeds are in the center of wherever you planted it. That's it, guys. We're gonna keep up with all these plants that I've planted. If you follow me on Instagram, you can check out my stories, Instagram, kennethdamenath, and then you can follow me on my little at-home gardening journey. Thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you guys have a great time gardening as well, and maybe I'll make more, you know, longer videos like this about my little gardens, because I am a big fan of eating green stuff and making it myself. Thanks, you guys, for watching. I stream on Twitch live all the time. Check me out in the description below. We'll see you guys when it's time to harvest some of these plants. Bye-bye.